is diaspora members, I think we have the same education as those in advanced economies today. Okay. Second, I think we've traversed borders, we've had experience, gained knowledge and skill set that I think can be a reason why we should be able to participate or engage ourselves in activities in Tanzania. Third reason, we have access to information, which is the key. Once you have information, then you can make a good decision, And the other reason, the fourth reason, I think we have access to capital. Living here in a diaspora, as you know, cost of capital is really expensive. I mean, it's really high on the ground. So I think we have advantage in that case. And the fifth reason, I think we are more driven today than maybe 15 or 20 years ago. So I can say there's a lot of opportunities on the ground, and we diasporas, we can engage ourselves directly or indirectly. And how we engage ourselves as a member of diaspora, I think we can go into those opportunity, take advantage of those opportunity, whether it's investments or trade. The other thing we can do is to share the information with our colleagues, the people here in our diaspora, in our communities, the people we work with, those who are interested in Tanzania, those who are interested in investing in Tanzania, The other thing we can do is to enhance those opportunities by the knowledge we have, the innovative ideas that we have. We can make it happen. There's challenges on the ground. There's challenges on the individual levels, but I think together, if we come up, together as a diaspora, I think we can come up with a concrete, innovative ideas that, could make a difference, could be a game changer. So I have a minute. So I think there's an interesting proverb. This is Ashanti proverb, and I think it's very interesting. If I share with you, it's it said, don't let those don't let those things that you cannot do tear the hands from those who can do. So I think anything that we can come up with, maybe it's ideas. I know financially some diaspora might be having constraints in that area, but I think altogether, I think we can come up with ideas. There's something going on now. It's called crowdfunding. Those type of innovation ideas, we can overcome all the barriers or those bottlenecks we're having and build our country, Tanzania. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. There's two things I'd like to do for me. One is to talk to a gentleman who does not believe Tanzania is rising, and then tell me where the capital is once you are done. But for now, I would like to invite the Honorary Counsel, Honorable Berg, please.
Thank you very much. And first, I'd like to congratulate the organizers on impeccable timekeeping. This is the best time management I've seen at any Dakota conference, so you have to be applauded. We could have used you at the Night of Jakaya in Washington, which started at 7 and ended at 12:45, just in time for breakfast. But it was a remarkable evening. I am an elder in one of the smallest tribes of Tanzania, the Wazungu tribe. And I was inducted into the Tanzanian family in 1968 when I married a Kifungilo girl from the Kifungilo orphanage. And we were married for 36 years, and about halfway through that span, she found out that she was actually a Sukuma girl. So I have some coverage throughout the country. Let me tell you quickly the sort of things that I do as honorary consul, and I'd like first to apologize on behalf of my colleagues, the other honorary consuls who should have been here, and I understand that they don't all have equal financial resources, and it's costly to come to all these events. But I would hope that at the next gathering we'll have more of us here. They all do good work. So what do we do? Well, we do primarily the same sort of thing that the embassy does with two major distinctions. We get to be called honorable instead of your excellency, and we have absolutely no budget. In fact, it cost me on average about $15,000, $20,000 a year to do what I do, because somehow there are a number of Tanzanian organizations that believe that we have a budget and ask us to help with funding, so we do. I started getting involved with the Tanzanian diaspora long before that term was applied to Tanzanians. It was only applied to Jewish folks throughout the world in the early years. That was the only diaspora that was known. When Dakota was formally announced and established, that term had become more broadly applied, and I had become very intimately involved, unfortunately, after 9/11. I had offices both in Minnesota and in South Florida. And after 9/11, and I'm an American citizen, so I can say this, there was a massive overreaction for understandable reasons on the part of the American government. If you were young, black, male, and Muslim, you had probably about a 70% chance of being arrested for trumped-up charges, very often prostitution, soliciting prostitution or engaging in prostitution, a lot of trumped-up charges, and other things. So I spent most of my time either in jail or speaking to Tanzanians and trying to spring them out of jail. In the course of my involvement with Tanzania, I've had many unfortunate experiences where people should not have been in jail. So that was a lot of the work. Fortunately, the American government has smoothened out things. We're no longer overreacting that way. So now I can spend my time more productively. That involves helping repatriate people who are sick and need to go back to Tanzania, sometimes, unfortunately, bodies when people don't survive. It involves people that have overstayed their issues, their visas that are issued, and helping them leave the country on an orderly basis. Also, of course, helping Tanzanian-focused NGOs throughout the United States that have visa issues when they want to do good work in Tanzania. We get great support from the embassy as well as from State House and from the Foreign Ministry in establishing those kinds of connections as we need them. We do trade delegations in both directions, both reverse and outbound. In fact, I'm going to be going with Ben and Congressman Ellison from Minnesota, the first Muslim, by the way, in the United States Congress. There are now two in the House, but he was the first. And he's keenly interested in Tanzania, and he's coming along on the trade delegation shortly. We've had many trade delegations. We've established sister city relationships. There's a very strong relationship between Moshi and Delray Beach, Florida, for example. I chaired that program. We have had delegations from the University of Minnesota and from the University of St. Thomas, both in Minnesota, and from several other universities throughout the country. And I particularly would like to thank Ambassador Safua for having accommodated and personally lectured to those groups as they arrived, as has the President, which is remarkable. American students don't get that kind of access to their own government, but they do to the Tanzanian government, and that's really appreciated because it creates new ambassadors for Tanzania throughout the United States. We are working on a lot of different things, but I have two principles in all the work that I do, and that is that it should be relevant to the diaspora and it should add value. So one of the things we did 2.5, 3 years ago now, we convened the first ever gathering of NGOs that are focused on Tanzania, and with minimal distribution, we gathered 152 NGOs that do phenomenal work in healthcare and education and agriculture in Tanzania. And many of those have led to very productive long-range connections some on the corporate level, some on the academic level, and some on the medical level. I believe in walking the walk, not just talking the talk. I have climbed Kilimanjaro 3 times, twice to raise money for the Celian Lutheran Hospital. And I walked from Loliondo to Arusha twice, 211 miles in 8 days, to raise money for Operation Bootstrap Africa, which built schools in Tanzania and teachers' quarters. So I'm trying to give back. I'm extremely fond of Tanzania. I always say that I have 3 home countries. I am a member of the Norwegian diaspora. I live in this country, and I feel very much at home in Tanzania. So I say I split my time this way. I spend half my time on Tanzanian matters, half my time on Norwegian matters, half my time on American matters, and the last half on remedial math. We invite every one of you who have something that we can help with. At the moment, I'm helping folks in California, in Texas, in Oregon, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Washington, D.C., Florida, and Maine on various projects that have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with my jurisdiction, which is Minnesota. But I like to help where I can, so I try to step up to the plate and be helpful. That's what we do as honorary consuls. I think that we need to continue to work with both the Foreign Ministry and the Embassy to have an increased flow of information so we can put it up on our websites and so forth. And I think that it behooves both the Ministry and the Embassy to be very careful in selecting honorary consuls so that we can have the highest quality return on investment. Since you invest nothing, you should get a lot back. Thank you very much.
Jamani wasukuma shemeji huyo. Thank you so much, sir. And the last speaker for the evening is none other than Miss Oren from USAID. Karibu, as they say in Tanzania.
My name is Oren, and you'll notice that no one has said my last name. I'm always introduced as Oren, Miss Oren. My name is Oren Waichi Shaw, and it's pretty simple, I think, but I've been living with it for a long time. I am the principal advisor to the Assistant Administrator for Africa at the U.S. Agency for International Development. That is the lead agency in the U.S. government involved in international development around the world. The Africa Bureau is responsible for all of our sub-Sahara Africa activities, and we are the lead in the interagency, that is among all of the agencies, in development policy. It's a pleasure for me to be here speaking with you and hopefully engaging with you even after this presentation. I was pleased to see Ambassador Mulamula. She is an engaged and strong advocate in our agency as well as the other agencies. We've had our discussions most recently with respect to AGOA, which I will talk about in a few minutes. I hope this works, yes. And I will pass on some of these because I know there's time, and I prefer question and answers. But USAID recognizes, as does the administration, that the diaspora is a critical link in terms of long-term sustainability of emerging markets, especially in Africa. And we work with the diaspora in a number of ways. There is the Global Innovation Fund, and everyone will be able to get a copy of this, so there's no need to write these things down, which invests in social innovations. What we are trying to do at USAID is not just take the traditional programming with the government, which we do, but also we are seeking to we recognize that we do not have all of the answers. Perhaps the government don't have all of the answers, but it is people like you who have new ideas, innovation, and so we are trying to solicit more of those things. So the Global Innovation Fund, which was started at the UN General Assembly at UNGA, helps fund social innovations, and we are a member of that. We're also a member of the International Diaspora Engagement Alliance, or IDEA, and indeed next week will be the International Diaspora Week, and there will be activities going on around the country, both online as well, virtually as well as physically. There is the Diasporas for Development Initiative, which is centered in USAID, where we partner with Accenture and with Cusco International to encourage diaspora volunteerism, because that technical expertise is also needed in the countries. And there is the Making of All Voices Count grant challenge. And you'll hear this more and more with aid, where again, we're seeking and soliciting ideas for how we might be able to address some of those issues. And we will put out challenges, grant challenges, and ask for people to come back with ideas of how we might want to go forward. I just mentioned briefly that next week is the Global Diaspora Week, and there's information here if you want to find out, and I'm sure you guys are probably already linked into this. But again, that's something that we, USAID, are sponsors of. The importance of the diaspora, as I indicated, goes all the way to the top. During the African Leaders Summit in July, there was indeed at the White House a diaspora forum where we discussed what are the challenges and the opportunities that for the diaspora here in the United States and Africa. It was approximately 200 leaders from the continent as well as the U.S. 10 of our agencies were involved. Clearly we were, USAID. USTDA wasn't there? Ah, you see?
Sorry.
They weren't there. But Peace Corps, Health and Human Services, and some of the other key agencies in the interagency were there, and it provided an opportunity for networking, for exchanging ideas, and as a result of that, we in the administration are now trying to formulate how we can be more effective with the diaspora going forward, and I am part of that process. Now, what do we concretely do that would be of interest to this audience? We sponsor the African Diaspora Marketplace. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. Okay, and it's a partnership between ourselves, Western Union, and George Washington University. It is not just a business plan contest, but it really is an opportunity for diaspora here in the United States to come up with ideas that could be relevant and generate jobs and employment in their home countries. Yes, you win a little money because if you win the partnership, but in addition, or the challenge, but in addition, those who come into this as we call it, ADM, that's easier for me to say. If you are an ADM, there's also opportunities to present your ideas to banks, to financiers, to venture capital companies. So it's a great way to connect the U.S. economy with, in this case, the Tanzanian economy. So if you have ideas, and I've heard some today even, about things that could be implemented in Tanzania, business plan, think about ADM as a way of perhaps helping you to launch it in Tanzania. It's usually early stage SMEs. We're not looking for large corporates. We will sometimes do and look at mezzanine financing, where you actually have been successful for 5 years, but you're looking to really expand or diversify. But generally it's early stage where there's a great idea, but you just need that push to get over. The approach, it was started in 2009. I've already sort of talked about the fact that it's encouraging sustainable economic development and growth in Africa. And it's really, we're trying to identify those entrepreneurs that are going to be the links between the U.S. and the African, in this case, Tanzanian economy, bringing that know-how, that expertise, the understanding of our market, right? If you're trading, if you're trying to trade and export to the United States, one of the big challenges that African companies oftentimes have is they may have a great product, but they don't have the expertise and the knowledge of this market. And this is probably the most complex market to enter. But you do. To date, there have been 35 winners in ADM. 8 of those companies have been owned by women. There's been $4 million that's been provided to the ADM, as well as 106 SMEs that have presented their projects to bankers, as I said, to financiers and investors, potential investors. Unfortunately, and I had my staff look at this and double check before I came, there has never been a Tanzanian winner. So, the challenge is to you. The challenge is to you. I know there's a lot of innovative, creative ideas out there that people are thinking about doing it back in Tanzania. I'll be looking for those proposals. So you see, I'm not going to read through this, we don't have time for it, but you can see that there have been a number of countries represented whose companies have won grants. As I indicated, that there's also a number of women. We have now actually formally linked with State Department's African Women's Entrepreneurship Program. So the two are linked together, and we are encouraging, and here's another possible opportunity. The African Women's Entrepreneurship Program are chapters in Africa, in various African countries. And so we are looking to see how we can link the ADM, that is diaspora here, with women entrepreneurs in Africa for that business connection, to come up with a business that encompasses both elements. So again, opportunities. It's a yearly engagement, and so ADM 3 we just launched it on October 1st. There will be a sort of roadshow announcing and advertising and getting the word out. Pre-proposal assistance can be provided by the Minority Business Development Agency if there's need. You may have a great idea, but actually pulling that proposal together, you may need work or assistance, and the Minority Business Development Agency can assist in that. There is no sector restriction. Improved monitoring is more for us than for you, but we do monitor the projects, right, going forward. We don't just sort of say you've won it and then just sort of leave you to your own. We really want to make sure that there is a long-term viability of these businesses. TA, once you've won it, TA can be provided by a consulting firm to help because, again, the probability of a small business once launched lasting 10 years, okay, 2 minutes, it's almost done, is relatively low. So having assistance to help you even in the running and the implementation of your project can also oftentimes be useful. The African Growth and Opportunity Act, I'll just go over this very quickly. This is something that was launched in 2002, is a trade preference program to try to encourage African-U.S. trade and primarily trade from Africa to the United States. It has been around for 14 years. Next year it comes up for reauthorization. We have had a number of consultations with the diplomatic corps in Washington, with the business community, both here as well as in Africa. Congress is a congressional piece of legislation, so ultimately it is Congress that will write the authorization. I don't think there is any likelihood of it not being reauthorized. When it will be reauthorized is up to Congress. But in terms of what it will look like, there's been a lot of discussion about how long the term will be, this new reauthorization, but what it will do, or what it does, what AGOA principally does, is allow products to come in at a preferred tariff and basically at a zero tariff. This is over and above the GSP, which is another program, a broader program worldwide for select products. AGOA allows more products, or put more products in that category for African countries. And so I won't go through the stats and all of that sort of stuff, but In addition to it, and this I think is the important part, AGOA is a trade preference. All they're saying is that if you're bringing in pineapple or garments or whatever, you can bring it in at a zero duty. But associated with AGOA has been the trade hub, and there's been a recognition that it's not enough to do trade preference. There's also a need to provide assistance, trade and investment capacity building assistance, both to the governments in Africa as well as to companies or value chains. And so concurrently with Congress trying to figure out what it will ultimately present as the new legislation, the administration is working on what sort of package will we present almost concurrent in terms of a trade and investment capacity building initiative. The President issued a presidential memorandum to the interagency July 4th, instructing us to get together to come up with recommendations on what would be needed to have a more transformational increase in trade with Africa. And there's a steering group, are working, I won't say day and night, but we are working very hard to come up with what is mandated, and that is a recommendation by January 31st to the President of the United States on what this should look like. So keep your ears open. It should be very interesting. Finally, I would just raise, even though it's not on your side of the world, but in terms of opportunities, Ebola, as you well know, is something that is raging and ravaging West Africa. I won't go through all of these. What I can say with respect to the partnership, that we are encouraging medical volunteer programs. We have a medical volunteer program. And so to the extent that I thought I heard there was a doctor here, but if you know of people who might be willing to volunteer for a month or whatever, here's a link, and we're strongly encouraging that. And then finally, some people aren't entrepreneurs, but they are interested in furthering trade and the relationship between the diaspora and their home country in the United States. So there are other opportunities. There are personal opportunities. We have grants for people who are interested in getting into international development and working either with ourselves or state. There is also the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Businesses, where we, similarly to what USTDA was saying, we actually engage and procure services from small and minority businesses. So that's yet another opportunity, another way of partnering. And then finally, these are the contacts. I've talked about the diaspora engagement, and that's part of our